Mm-hmm.
Okay, welcome to the second talk of the day. It's just before the coffee break. So this is the building the fastest Drupal in the galaxy by Eoipso and Niteman, and well, hope you enjoy it.
Woo! So apparently we're doing this presentation. So Pedro is going to introduce me.
This is Mateu, the sunny developer of Lulobot.
He's Pedro. He's the guy that makes you have hair in your head when your server is crashing, and you can find him at SBIT. One thing that we are compelled to say after hearing that talk is cheap is that we haven't tested all of this. I mean, we have read about, we have learned a lot, and some of the things here are from a theoretical point. Some others we have tested, and we have demos, and we have code repositories that you can clone and play with. So hopefully you will have a lot of resources when the presentation ends. But there are some things that we just are presenting because we think they are cool, and we have only played a little bit from a toy perspective. So we haven't put in production everything that is in the presentation. Okay?
Okay, little summary of the presentation. Let's forget Drupal before 8. Caches are not like they used to be. Drupal 8 is great for performance because it is in the very design, in the very bones of Drupal 8. Drupal still has a complex cache system. I say it has 1,001 caches. And we'll try to show you some of these.
Thank you. So yeah, one of the things that you have to take into account when you're thinking about caching in Drupal 8 is that there are some things that we are inheriting from Drupal 7, which are swappable cache backends, which it's just a fancy way of saying that there are some interfaces that you need to implement, and then all the classes that implement this interface can be considered by the cache system, right? So we have to think about the cache backends and our cache strategy, or Drupal's cache strategy. For the cache backends, we have several, actually, in core. We have the database cache, we have APC, we have, not memcache, but, well, we have several. And there are many contributed modules that implement this, like memcache, Redis, etc. All those implement a simple class, which is cache backend interface, and that's all it is. I mean, this is like Drupal 7. We did that for Drupal 7, but it was one of those things that we needed to implement interfaces in Drupal 7, and it kind of really didn't belong, right? Because we didn't work with object-oriented programming, but now it fits.
There is a new thing on Drupal 8 about swappable cache backends, is that they are chainable. Core, by example, use the fast chained backend by default, which means you have APC on the first level, and then you can have database or memcache or another, and Core takes care of the consistency of the system for you. But you can implement your own chained interface.
Yeah, that's pretty cool when you restart your server and memcache is completely cold, APC is completely cold, but you have your cache in the database, so you can use that and then warm your fastest caches. So that's why they are chainable. Well, for the cache strategy, you want to strive to just not do the work, right? This is just in life, right? You don't want to do the work. If you have to do it, then you want to do it in a path that it's not critical. For Drupal, the critical path is the bootstrap, when everything is starting. If you can do the work outside of the bootstrap, better. If you don't, just cache it, and cache it permanently if you can. If you can't, do it temporarily. And yeah, at the end of the strategy, try not to do it in sync if you can. Maybe you can do edge side includes, or if you're rendering something, maybe you can put the operation in a queue and execute it asynchronously and do it later. There are some strategies that you can follow, so you don't have to do all the work. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that you all know this quote by Phil Halton, but it was too good not to put. There are only two hard things in computer science: cache invalidation and naming things. Well, you saw that they named swappable cache interface, which is kind of hard to say. They didn't do a good job with that, but they did with cache invalidation. I don't know if you have seen this talk from Wim and Fabian, but they have this concept of you can have the content as fresh as possible, or a good cache hit ratio, or a simple cache invalidation, but you can only have 2 of them, right? So for Drupal 8, we chose the first 2, right? So we have a crazy cache invalidation problem. Well, it's not a problem, actually. It's complicated, but good news. Drupal does it for you if you provide the right information.
So Drupal 8 comes with batteries included. And the main batteries, the main thing that site builders will see of Drupal 8 is that there are 2 main cards: the page cards and the dynamic page cards. So we have the all good page cards, but not so old this time. Because
well, I don't know if you know this, but Pedro here is the only people in the room that I know that has worked with a version of Drupal that didn't have page cache. So page cache is pretty old. It's Drupal 4.7. You started in 4.5?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty old. But it got evolved. We have new features. So basically, if you don't know page cache, it's kind of a URL-based caching system that takes the page and puts it in a cache, and the key is the URL. This is really good because it allows you to avoid the bootstrap from start, right? You shortcut and you return, and you can put this in one of the swappable cache backends, and maybe you're returning from memory with memcache or whatever, right? This is really fast. The new thing is that the page cache is instantly invalidated when something that is in that page changes, which is really cool because you're only using a URL for the key, right? And how is that done? We'll see a little bit. We'll see later. One tricky thing is that it only works for anonymous users. And it only works for anonymous users if you have the same version for all anonymous users. So if you do geolocation or something like that, page cache may not be out of the box a good match for you. And when I say anonymous users, I say users without a cookie session, because we have the authentication API in Drupal 8, but the page cache system doesn't quite follow that. So you could get something cached when you are authenticating with, let's say, basic auth or some other authentication system that the contrib provides. And if you get that cached for one authenticated user, it may get served for another authenticated user differently, and you could have cache poisoning. So if you are using an authentication system that is not cookie-based, then just take care of page cache. There are something called request policies that you can use to invalidate the caches. But that's kind of an edge case, right?
And there is also the dynamic page cache. This is the new coming for Drupal 8. It is built upon render cache, render API. We will show you later how it works. But the key of the system is that it is powered by cacheability metadata. And dynamic page cache has its pros and cons also.
Yeah, one of the cons is that it's not as fast as page cache, because you still need some bootstrapping, because you need some kind of logic to be applied there. It's not a mindless caching based on URL, right? So it's slower, but it's still quite fast. So it's faster than if you have to compute everything. And works well for all kind of uses and all kind of users, and also works for, also updates the content every time that it needs to be updated. So that's what they have in common. The bad thing, though, is that as a user, you will have to mind the caching system now. I mean, that's it. Forget about Drupal 7. Now you have to think about caching. Every time that you write something that renders in the page, every time that you write a render array, you have to think about caching.
Not only rendering. Actually, if you are writing a REST service or whatever, you have to think about cache.
Exactly. So the render API caching is powered by two concepts in general: this cacheability metadata and placeholdering, and we'll see both of them. But if you leave the room and you only want to remember one of them, please remember both. But if you only want to remember one of them, remember about cacheability metadata. So what is it? Because we keep talking about it. I see this metadata as a simple way of keeping Drupal informed about the content dependencies of the page. That means that if you think about the render array tree, at any level, you can know whatever is behind that branch, what depends on what. If it depends on a node that is over here in the tree, then if that node is updated, everything in that branch gets invalidated, right? So the idea is that we put something in that render array that tells us, hey, this is going to get cached at this level and all the levels above and below. But if a node gets if this node gets invalidated, then we need to invalidate all the caches across the line. So that's what cache tags do. It's a way to have your caches invalidate when something else changes, right? If you can imagine a block in the sidebar that contains the title of the first node that was added to the system. It's a very simple block. You can go, create the block, and have that title there, and maybe it also says welcome and then the name of the user, right? You obviously want that block cached, because we said that we want everything cached. Otherwise, Drupal 8 is not super fast if you're not caching things, right? So if the first node changes, you want the block to change as well, right? That makes sense. So in that block, you would add a tag for the first node in the system. That's the concept. It's simple. We'll see an example, and it will be super clear.
There is also cache context. Is the way that Drupal can have different versions of the objects. The canonical case in Drupal 8 is user permissions. Every dynamic page cache depends on the permission of the users. So if Mateu is the admin of a Drupal site and I'm only a editor adding content to the site, and we have some blog that shows how many users are logging, something like that, the Drupal can catch the blog in different ways for he and for me.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I mean, what it does is you have the same cache object, but different versions of it. And you can specify how to create these different versions, right? There are multiple ways and contexts that you can use, and you can then define your own. So you could add a context that has a different cache version of an object for maybe if, I don't know, it's Monday, then you have a different cache object for Monday, if that makes sense, which I don't think so. But anyways. And then there's max age, right? We are used to this one. This is the time to live, the TTL that we learned to love, and now we will not miss in Drupal 8. Because right now you want to cache permanently. There are only few cases. We're trying to find an example of when you would need to have a max age, and we couldn't almost, but he got one.
Yeah, but it is only for edge cases. In your normal day, you always want things to be permanently cached.
Yeah.
If you have the memory and the resources to have it cached forever.
Yeah, either cache it forever or don't cache it, because there are times that you can't cache. Like, you want to see a random number every time that you refresh the page. So how do you cache that? Right? If you cache it, then it's not random anymore. So either cache it permanently or don't cache it. Again, this is very red to offend you, but I mean, it's serious. Forget about it. You can't just render things now. You have to think about caching. So it's kind of a prayer. Let's make the effort and think about this and tell yourselves, I will always think about cacheability when I'm rendering anything. You at least have to think about it. Sometimes core will provide this for you, and you will learn the situations when you are doing this, but you have to think about it. It's very expensive. If it's expensive, cache it. That's it. If it varies depending on the situation, like one logged-in user versus another, or maybe the day of the week, use cache context. If you have to update a cache that depends on something else, put the cache tag, right? On the cache object, you put the tag from this other thing. And finally, if it can become stale, use max age. But again, it's very difficult to find an edge case that you need max age. So we'll see an example, and surprise, the example is the first node in the side, is a block in the sidebar, and it's a greeting to the user. You want the block cached, and we're going to use this cacheability metadata. We're going to invalidate the title when the node changes, and we're going to show how it's different for different users, different cache entries for different users, and we're going to cache it permanently. We'll see how you can really mess it up. You can show information to a user that you shouldn't be using, and we can see how we get stale content. So yeah.
Think about a credit card number or an account number instead of a greeting to the user.
That's awesome. I don't know how to do this. Yes. Okay. All right. So this is a repo that I have published. I will show the URL. It's kind of a simple repo. It's in my GitHub render cache example, and you'll see that there are 4 stages, and you can check the code. You can see a link to the video that I'm going to show, etc. So you don't get everything from here because it's kind of small and hard to see, but you can go back and see this, and probably this can be of a good example for you in the future. So basically here what I'm doing is there are 4 stages. I'm going to start with the branch number 1, which contains the block already coded, and it's showing the title, and I'm going to show you how by updating the node, it doesn't get refreshed. So we have here, this is my very first node, and it matches this because we just cleared caches, right? So now we're going to edit the node, and I'm going to change this to be my very first node. And I'm going to save, and you'll see how we get stale data because the block in the site is not going to refresh. This says my very first node, and then here, the other one. So the second video, what I'm going to show you is how I'm going to go to the code. I'm going to add the cache tags for the node, and whenever we edit that node, the block is going to update magically. And hopefully you're going to be super impressed and clap afterwards. So I'm just changing the branch here. I'm going here. So this is, there's this function that just gets the first node in the site. And yeah, right there, we're using the renderer. There's a function that helps you take all the cacheability metadata from a node or an entity in general and put it in your render array. So you don't have to learn. Yeah, you don't have to think about it. You just do, okay, take me all the dependencies from this node and add them to this render array, because this is the way that we express the content dependencies for Drupal, right? So just by adding this guy here, we're done. I mean, our block is cacheable, and it's gonna refresh. Okay, I'm changing screens. Yeah, I'm gonna clear caches because we want to, we just made code changes. We want to start clean. Clearing caches takes a little bit of time, and of course, now if we update, this is gonna update because there are no caches, and this is going to get rebuilt. But now I updated a couple of times. I refreshed the page a couple of times, so this is cached right now. And what we're going to see is that if I change this back to my very first node, or this is my very first node, or whatever title that I want to put there, it's going to get updated in here. And that's pretty cool. And I'm going to show it again, because I like it a lot. I just removed the exclamation point, and it gets automatically updated. So that's pretty much it for cache tags. I mean, it is impressive, and it's super simple. Now we're going to talk about cache context and how we can use the cache system to have multiple versions of the cache. So the change that I did to the blog is I added this child render array here that says hello username, and that's it, right? And still our dependencies are only to the node and not to the user, not to the current user, right? So I'm gonna, yeah, this is what I added. I just said that. Good. I'm gonna clear caches to refresh, and we're gonna see that it says hello admin. And since this is applied per role, I'm gonna change to Firefox and Safari, and I'm gonna have two separate screens, one with the user test and one with the user test 2. And this I'm gonna refresh. This is gonna get cached with hello test. And you probably can't see this, but here for test 2, it says hello test, right? And you've been at a conference. You know how bad it is to say hello and say a random name, right? So you don't want this, obviously, because this could be a credit card, like he said, or this could be, I don't know, maybe I'm super rich and I don't want you to know, right? So you don't want cache poisoning. This is called cache poisoning. So how do you do that? Oh, you add cache context. We talked about that. Yeah, well, that's the video. Yeah, for the cache context, I could use the same function here. I should use the same function here, but I wanted to show you what this function does under the hood. It creates this #cache thing, and then it has context, and it has tags, etc. But usually you need to only use that function, because that's better. So yeah, again, including caches, I'm going to change to Safari and Firefox. I'm going to refresh test a couple of times. So this gets cached here and over there. I'm going to refresh, and even if it's cached here, now we have a context. So we have two versions of the cache, and now it says test2, and it says test. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's super simple, and it's very, very useful. And we are going to go a little bit longer than that, probably.
So how this magic works? There's a concept you have to remember when you are coding things in Drupal 8. It's cache bubbling. Bubbling means that every cache metadata that is on the leaves of the render tree that Mateu told before needs to be passed on to the container object. So if you are, we have this issue actually in production. We code a block, and the block contains a view depending on a context, and we forgot to add cacheability bubbling to the block. And editors were complaining that I changed the featured node of the site, and it's not reflected.
Right, so the concept of bubbling is pretty easy. I mean, you put something in this, some cacheability metadata in this black box, and this gets inherited in this maroon box, to the green box, to the orange box, and to the blue box. So if you invalidate anything, let's say in the maroon box, you still get the cache for the black one, but you invalidate this cache, this cache, this cache, and the blue one. Right, but you may have other parts of the site still cached, like the black one, the green one, etc. So even if you invalidate one part of the page, you don't have to invalidate everything, and then rebuilding the page is pretty fast. So that's the part that you really need to keep in mind. Placeholdering is kind of a very cool concept, and it's kind of a little bit more complicated, but this had to be introduced by the fact that we build very dynamic pages, and that's what the web is, and we don't have content or designs or experiences, digital experiences that are static enough for these cache systems to work. Because if you think about it, if we have this random number affects the whole page, because you can cache the whole page and deliver it very fast, because there's a tiny random number that can't be cached. So this placeholdering hopes to solve this, and it does. So basically, the placeholdering is take the things that are hard to cache or that are very poor at caching, maybe because they have a low cache hit ratio, because, I don't know, you don't want to cache usernames because you have 10,000 users, right? That doesn't make sense to have 10,000 versions of a cache, right? So instead, these things that are very expensive, you extract them, you put them in your pocket or wherever, and you put a placeholder. A placeholder is just a note in the rendered page that says, hey, here you should put this random number, but do it later, because I'm going to serve everything except the random number super fast, and then I'm going to come back and put the random number in there. So that's the concept. So yeah, there are two strategies to do that. Well, there are several strategies to do that, and it's pluggable, but the one that's dominating right now, and it's in Drupal core today, in Drupal 8.1, it's a release candidate, but it's going to be in Drupal core, is BigPipe. BigPipe just is a placeholdering strategy that once you have the placeholder and the thing that you want to put there, you use Ajax, if you have JavaScript enabled, or you just send parts of the code, part of the rendered page with multiple flashes in your server. It's kind of confusing. But the easy way to think about this is that it's replaced by Ajax. It's what we have been doing, right? For all this time. And you can do something with edge-side includes and BigPipe, right?
It enables you to use edge-side includes. It enables you to use a new coming module that we will mention later. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So how do you control this placeholdering? So how do you make something to be a placeholder? Basically, you have to do two things. You have to set placeholder equals true in your render array. So we saw before what a render array looks like. You have placeholder equals true in there, and you have to have this lazy builder function, because you're going to put a note that says, hey, here, render that thing, right? But we need to know how to render that thing in isolation. We need to know how to just render that thing. So this lazy builder here contains a function, the name of a function, and all the arguments that you want to pass. There are some limitations of what you can do, because you want this to be fast, right? And you don't want to have a very heavy bootstrap just to be able to render this, right? So these limitations are that the lazy builder function needs to be stateless, which means that if you run it 10 times, it's going to return the same result the 10 times, independently of the context, if the arguments are the same. And there's also another condition on the argument, is that you cannot pass objects, because the objects contain state, and that would be cheating, right? So basically, you have to pass scalars and a function, and those are the things that you need to do in order to use placeholdering. And this placeholder equals true can be set manually or automatically. So how does that look like? And this is blurred on purpose. So, and the green box contains, it just sets the metadata. This is the code that renders a block. So after you declare the render array of a block, that build variable that we saw before, this code comes in and it actually renders it. So what it does is you create a render array, and then a hook is executed. This block build hook alter is executed. So you can implement that hook in your custom module and set placeholder equals true. So you can do it manually here, right? You can also see in here that the block system, by default, is adding a lazy builder. So whatever you put in the block has a lazy builder. So if you want to placeholder a block, just implement the hook, and set placeholder equals true, and you have the placeholder. So it's pretty easy. But another way to have it create placeholders is automatically. And this is when things get really cool. Because you can set some conditions based on the metadata that actually say, if this is hard to cache, placeholder it, and don't even tell me about it. So when I said, if you have 10,000 users, you don't want to cache this, you just have to go to your services YAML file, and there is a section that says auto placeholder conditions, and you set the context of the user, and that's actually one of the defaults that come with the site. So yeah, out of the box, the Drupal blocks in the system get auto placeholdered based on these conditions, and there are other parts of the site that do the same.
Core does it for you. And
Yeah.
Core, every version is being more clever about when to auto placeholder things and how to do it. So,
Yeah, if you think about auto placeholdering as a way to render the page, it will not improve the actual time that you will see the whole page complete, but you will get most of the page completed. The user will be able to go and maybe find the menu that they want, and they don't care if at some place at the bottom you have a content that was hard to cache and it's coming via Ajax and it's not ready yet. So the perceived performance is much higher. I mean, it's very high. So talking about perceived performance, we have BigPipe, and we have this other thing that we don't really know about it, but it sounds really cool, and we couldn't avoid commenting, which is called reflexless.
yeah, BigPipe is the strategy that allows Drupal to render the placeholders automatically via Ajax, or in a future via edge sites includes, or whatever. And reflexless is an implementation of a Ruby concept. Excuse me. It's inspired by Ruby on Rails turbolinks. We missed something out, BigPipe? No. It's,
Yeah, I mean, this turbolinks idea, in theory, works like a DOM diffing, maybe. I'm not really sure how this works, but the promise is that you render something, and then when you click in a link, you only change whatever is different between the two pages. It's kind of, you're not refreshing the page, because it's kind of, that's what it's called, refreshless. And yeah, we are almost at the end, and this whole caching system is like a present. It's very cool, because it takes the very high complexity of invalidating things out of you. You just have to add some tags and some context, and that's it. And maybe you have to implement a hook to set create placeholder equals true. Big deal, right? So for us, this just justifies choosing Drupal 8 as a platform. And that's it.
Any questions?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. I don't see the questions. Let me.
What is avoiding placeholdering to work with state? Why doesn't it work with state? So if you have, imagine like a basket or a cart, why wouldn't that work?
So, well, we knew that this would happen, right? So the reason of not saving state is that you want to be able to render these extra bits very fast, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be a point. Actually, if you go into the implementation, you will see that if you pass an object, you get an exception. You cannot do it by the by design. Sorry, thank you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, okay, more dancing. It's a trap. What about cache warming? Who asked this? Do you want to extend on that?
You mentioned that it actually renders really quick, but what's your approach basically for cache warming?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
What's your approach to cache warming?
Let me think about it. So you could do cache warming, like, for instance, for rendering a page, you mean?
Yeah, because you kind of rely on users visiting the page to reload the cache for you. It kind of slows them down then.
I don't think I would have a different strategy regarding this that I would in Drupal 7, because you want the caches to get created. The only thing is that now you have cache contexts, and you may want to create those contexts, those scenarios in your cache warming script. Like you would want to, since you are now creating cached versions for authenticated users, you may want to create a session in your cache warming script and go and run your script for the URLs that you want to warm, and do it for the different users, if that makes sense. Otherwise, if you don't care that much about context, this whole strategy of caching will cache the things that are common because they don't have that context, and then you only have to warm during the critical path. When the user visits, they only have to warm the things that are specific to them.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, this one is very good. Who asked this question about varnish? Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. No, we work with varnish, for example, and we want to invalidate the URLs in varnish. That my question is only that if this system that you implement in Drupal 8 is extensible to varnish, only that. Because
you need to take this one.
Okay, it is extensible to varnish. You only have to bubble the metadata. The only thing you have to do is to pass the metadata to varnish. Also, you have to support the metadata in your VCL configuration, you know, with ban lurker friendly bans. And actually, right now, you can use purge with a simple HTTP purge module and varnish 4, and it works almost out of the box. There is documentation in Drupal.org. I think Girling Guy updated it about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and let's try. It works, I promise.
thank you.
He's the varnish guy. This other one, I'm pretty sure that it was a trolling, but it's actually a very good question. So why do we need all this? It's because Drupal 8 is so extensible at so many levels. We have so many layers of abstraction that allows us to do all the things that we do in Drupal, right? That's why we all love Drupal. If you don't love Drupal, please go out. No, really, you have to pay a price for this, and it's performance, and we need all these caches because of that, because Drupal, you can do so many things in Drupal that it's kind of slower than it used to be. But with the caching, it is not. So that's why. Yeah, right. Okay, the question was already here. All right. How can you create your own cache tag? I haven't gone through the process of creating a cache tag. I know that for entities is as easy as putting the entity type ID, like node, colon, the node ID. For other things, I'm trying to think of a tag that wouldn't be entity-based. Maybe it would just be the cache ID, but I'm just guessing here. I don't know. Who asked this question? Wait a second for the microphone.
I have a module that creates a user hash, and I want to show it on the user profile and the views. So I wanted to create my own hash cache tag to invalidate afterwards the view and the user profile.
Wouldn't the user tag invalidate it for you? Maybe.
If the user hash changes, I want to invalidate the view that is creating the user list, for example.
So I'm not really sure I get the use case. When you can come here, but I think that you may want to just add the tag to the user. If this hash belongs to the user entity, you can add the tag to the user, because all the fields and properties belong to the entity. You put the dependency on the entity and not on the fields. And also, when you're dealing with users, many times you want to take care of the context as well, because that's kind of the prototypical situation when you want to use the context. But again, I haven't gone through the process of creating a new tag, so that would be interesting to hear about and to think of. And big pipe or dynamic cache, the question, the answer to this one is both. And with...
You can have big pipe without dynamic cache.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have one and the other, to have the other. And if you can have another cache on top of this, add it. I mean, I know how it sounds. I mean, it adds complexity. But this system is thought to work well together, right? On top of this, you can have page cache, right? It doesn't say anything about page cache, but you could add that. So I don't know who asked the question. Maybe that answered the question. I hope it did. Do you guys have any other questions? We have a high five for the last person that asks a question. Sorry, we didn't bring anything else.
Come on.
All right then, that's it.